Hey, so good to be with you once again. My name is Jeff Fuller, Jay Fuller Interviews. You can certainly subscribe to our YouTube channel at Jay Fuller Interviews. Also connect via the Facebook group Jay Fuller Interviews. We're also on Instagram and Twitter. But one you will not find on social media is my next guest, and I'm so glad to have him on. This is Coach Billy Waller. Coach, how are you?
I'm very good, Jeff. Nice to see you.
So, what are your thoughts on social media, and where is your social media presence?
So you will not find me on social media a whole lot. I don't do Facebook or Twitter or any of those things. For a number of years, I worked at the Boys and Girls Club, and I taught a number of net safety courses. And in my process of doing those, I just made the personal decision I wasn't going to do that anymore. So I've actually never had a Facebook page, but I pretty much I work in a field where I'm on a computer all day long, and I don't like getting on them once I get home.
Some days I wish I had that self-discipline, but I often lack it. Coach Billy Waller, behind me is a picture that looks familiar to you. It is Cabot, Vermont. What was it like growing up in Cabot?
Oh, it was, my early years, my dad was in the military and we jumped around a little bit. And he had some jobs that moved us around the state of Massachusetts. And then, when we settled in Cabot when I was in elementary school, it was like culture shock. It's so small. But the wonderful thing about that place is that you get to make friends really quickly. And then everybody in the town is kind of like, a surrogate parent. Everybody looks out for everybody. And I couldn't have asked for a better childhood than I had there.
Now, kind of a silly question, but do you enjoy Cabot cheese or do you eat any cheese?
So I do eat cheese, and I do eat Cabot cheese. And the factory itself was less than a mile from my home. So every once in a while in the summer, you drive there and take a tour for like 15 minutes, and so you get your free piece of cheese.
Oh man, that's so funny because I live in Waterbury Center, and I remember in high school being hungry, so I'd stop by the Cabot Annex and get the cheese there. They have the chocolate factory, get some chocolate, and then stop by the cider mill and then wash it all down with some cider. So Vermonters are resilient, if not cheap. And
Yes.
so Bill, when I interviewed Coach Will Voigt, who went to Cabot, a few years younger than you, he said a great thing for him was that if students didn't participate in different things, there wouldn't have been a drama or a music program, or you had to play all sports. For you, what other sports did you play besides basketball?
So I also played soccer and baseball, and you try to fit in during the summer. You'd be doing summer soccer, AU basketball, and then playing either like Babe Ruth or Legion. You did all those at the same time. So in Cabot, where you're 25 minutes from Montpelier, 25 minutes from St. Jake, 25 minutes from Morrisville, it's how you stayed busy. It kept you out of trouble, and it made sure that you played whatever sport was going on, because I know plenty of years our baseball team played whole seasons with 11 guys. So playing time was never a factor, but you certainly, if you didn't play, like Will said, you wouldn't have had enough for teams.
And now for me, I had the opportunity to coach against your dad at the middle school level when he was at Berrytown. For me, he seemed like such a great gentleman, and definitely have a lot of respect for him. For you, what was it like growing up with your dad?
Oh, well, thank you. I'm sure he'd appreciate that. My dad was a state trooper here in Vermont, and then he made the time to coach in basketball, and certainly watched my other sports. When it came to the other sports, he was hands off and let the coaches do their thing. He wasn't one of those crazy parents in the background, complaining about everything. He was a good guy who my teammates loved playing for him. I know that being a trooper, there was plenty of times where, he either showed up to practice in his full uniform, or the minute practice was over, he was running out to get to work. He made a lot of sacrifices in his time to make sure that me and my sister had the best opportunities to play. And I know that he had a lot of respect from the other coaches that he coached against, in the same manner that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's pretty special to have. So I'm going to divert a little bit to the professionalism of interviewing, to the old stories of playing against you. I think you're a year or two older than me. I went to Trinity Baptist Division 4 school out of Williston. And my brother, who was 6'3", but he was stuck playing center for Division 4, he used to get so mad because you would light us up from the 3-point line. My best friend, Nathan Frizzell, he's probably 5'5", maybe.
Yeah.
And my brother's like, put somebody taller up there because Billy's just shooting over the top of him. When you think back to high school, you scored a lot of points, but what do you remember most?
Well, the first thing I remember was the style of play that we played. We were very up and down. We were given a lot of freedom offensively as long as we did what was asked of us defensively. So I played with teammates that shared the ball and were willing to get the ball to the right person. I did handle it a lot, and I had the ball in my hands a lot, but I played with some really good players, Paul Surge and Chris Brining, Dave Pransky, Will Voigt, as you mentioned. And what I remember was we weren't tall at all. And I remember the battles of going up against, people like your brother and Mark Zangler from Danville and
Yeah.
Duncan Simmons from Craftsbury and those players. And, those experiences, I still look back at and with fond memories. I mean, it was during that time, I thought basketball was wonderful because every team seemed to have at least one or two players that were big time scorers that could light you up at any moment.
Yeah.
Your team was no different. Your brother was a very, very good player, and we eventually, as your brother moved on, you guys had a guy named Josh Kilgus who was
Yeah.
also a very talented
Yeah.
player. And Derek Brunel was a talented
Yeah.
player. You were pretty good yourself, so I certainly remember all those players. And I can't sometimes remember, what I had for breakfast 3 days ago, but I seem to remember minutes of every one of those games that I played in.
So true. And when you saw defenses kind of letting you shoot, not that you're an arrogant guy, you didn't talk much, at least that I remember. Did you ever wonder, like, why don't they switch? Because I'm feeling good tonight, and I'm just going to keep shooting as long as my teammates give me the ball.
I like I said, we were allowed to freelance a little bit on offense, so we were not predictable on what was going to happen. But I do feel like there were times where they did what your brother had mentioned. I remember playing against Craftsbury and them sticking John Duffel on me at 6'7",
Yeah.
just to make sure in that tiny gym in Craftsbury you had to shoot from dead on. There was no sides, so I'd get over half court and John Duffel's right in my face. I was lucky I didn't hit the bar when I shot. And then I can remember playing other teams too, like Danville, and they'd sometimes put Ryan Line on me, who was 6'4". At 5'7", I did that did bother me at times.
Yeah.
But I was also quick enough that I got to the basket a lot too, and I got fouled a lot. So, I was pretty fortunate to have a little bit of a diverse game that helped me get points, even when I was, getting box and ones and stuff like that.
Who coached you when you were at Cabot?
So, my dad and Bruce Collins and Tim Bolton. I did not have. I missed Steve Pratt by 1 year. But luckily, when I was playing in college. When I'd come back, he had let me help out with the team, and I certainly got some guidance from him during my college years.
So this is no disrespect at all, but I do remember after you graduated, they hung your jersey from the scoreboard, which was great and well deserved,
Yeah.
but they just used a wire hanger, and we always kind of chuckled at that. It's like, if you're good enough to have your jersey hung, can't you put like a shadow box or something? But I understand something took place with that jersey. Where's that jersey now, as far as you understand?
I honestly don't know. I went to college and did some other things. I came back and coached the Cabot and was even the athletic director there for a little while. I actually went through a number of boxes to look for, I never found it again, to be honest. I'm not really sure what happened to it. I'd heard that the reason that was just put on the hanger was because the lift in the school did not reach the ceiling anymore because it had some sort of glitch with it, and they never put it up any higher than they did.
So funny in Division 4 sports. It's what we loved, but it just definitely was not what some students are accustomed to. Growing up in a small town, playing for a small school, how did that really develop character in you that you wish maybe some of your players had to go through to be who you are now?
So one of the things that I think is a main difference uh, back then than today, even though there was AAU and that sort of thing, there wasn't a lot of summer league ball and stuff. So like you went out and played with your friends in the playgrounds, in people's yards. I played on a lot of barn courts. I played on a lot of dirt courts. I used to go to my friend Anthony Ducharme's house, and we played where on the left side there was a bank, and where you were eye level with the hoop. So you played in diverse conditions where like it was hard to dribble the ball, so you got to become a good passer. And today it seems like if you don't open the gym, kids don't go and play. There's nothing worse than driving by these parking lots where there's hoops and seeing nobody playing.
Yeah.
So that's a main difference. But as far as the character goes, like I said before, when you play in a small town, you have to go into like that post office or that local store the next day or whatever, and everybody knows you so well. So you play for like everybody. When you play in a bigger area, you play for your coach, you play for your team, you play for your school. But in a place like Cabot, you play for your whole community.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that about that place. It was the same when I coached there. You coached for the entire community.
Well, I had the privilege of interviewing Jeff Davis, who went to Craftsbury, and he had some great stories. But it truly is a community event when you're playing, and when you're playing well, everybody shows up. It just supports you. How did that help you as a coach now at Virgins?
So, I tried to bring that small town aspect to, Virgins as well. And, my teams are generally close knit. Most of the kids on my teams over the last 13, 14 years, they're friends outside of the game, which is how I remember playing. My teammates were more than just teammates. They were my friends. So, the other thing that you try to do, with just like I did in Cabot, I had 4 or 5 coaches that coached with me the whole time I was there. And when I played, I had the same coaches all the way through. Mm-hmm. When I got to Virgins, I try to keep continuity with our coaches. So it does have that family type atmosphere.
Yeah, that's good. At Virgins, that's quite a distance from Cabot. So there's a couple questions in there. But first, what did you know about the Virgins program before you were named the head coach?
So I knew that they had, especially on the boys' side at the time, they had good tradition. I also knew that they had probably one of the nicest courts and gymnasiums in the state of Vermont, if not the nicest. And I certainly knew the athletic director, Pete Manine. So, when I had the opportunity to apply and then eventually receive the job, I don't think I could have ended up in a better place for me. I really enjoy my time at Virgins and enjoy the people and the facilities there. They're top notch for sure.
Yeah, my sister, she kind of freelances for the Times Argus, and she loves taking pictures at your gym just because the lighting is just spectacular. I just want to talk about your JV coach, Jeff Gusliga. Good guy. I've gotten to know him for a little bit, full disclosure, but he was like a standout basketball player at Virgins. Is that weird having a known commodity, I guess, being an assistant to you, or how has that relationship developed?
Yeah, I don't think it's weird. I enjoy Jeff, and Jeff has a lot of knowledge about the game. Everybody in town knows him, and I think that's a good thing. I think it helps draw people to the game. There are times that, as you know, most high school games are attended by their friends and their family. Jeff has so many friends and family in town that, we get a pretty good section just from that. Jeff obviously was a very talented player himself. He was built kind of like your brother was, and had a nice feathery touch like that. He still has some really good game to him. You would not know he's as old as he is because he has the spirit of somebody that's definitely in his teens.
And now with Jeff, he went through a pretty severe car accident a few years ago. Can you just talk about what that meant to your community and the school as a whole?
Well, I can still remember. Jeff wasn't coaching with me then. I had a different assistant coach. He was coaching his kids at the lower grades, and we came back from a game of Missisquoi, and one of my players is like a neighbor to him, and she had gotten word just as we got off the bus. And I remember how devastated she was to hear, because at that time we didn't even know if he was going to survive, and he certainly has. He still has some, on bad days. His hip bothers him a little bit, but man, he can still get around. He's got a tremendous amount of resiliency and faith that allowed him to recover quickly. And I think that he's a testament to making sure that your beliefs can get you to places that sometimes rehab can't always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Virgins was hit with a tragedy, was the passing of Coach Quinn. Could you just share about that?
Yeah, that was very, very sad, very sudden. Pete Quinn is one of those names that's synonymous with Virgins basketball. He had been part of a championship winning teams as an assistant coach and a head coach. And I think he might be the only coach in Vermont that has a boys and girls state championship.
Wow.
If he's not the only, he's one of the select few. I worked side by side with him. The thing I remember most about him was he had a counselor background, and he really related to the kids, and he worked best with those that needed him the most. Those kids that were on the edge of making bad choices. They gravitated to him and to basketball, and he helped them really get through it. He helped a number of kids just flat out graduate, let alone be good basketball players.
So during this time, this is a picture. It's hard to see, but it's an empty gymnasium. It's just players and coaches. When you think about your players now, and I've read so much lately about the mental health of student athletes because they have not had that outlet during this pandemic, what are your thoughts?
I'm flat out worried, to be honest. I mean, I know, I know there's so many kids that if they didn't have the athletics, the drive to be the type of student and the type of person they were, wouldn't be there. The other thing is there's so many families that do the best they can, but by being on a sports team, that's like having another built-in family that keeps you in check and helps you create goals and teaches you things that sometimes get lost and just being at home. I'm not faulting parents. Parents have busy lives and stuff, but once upon a time, there was one parent at home or one parent worked part-time. These days, both parents work for the most part. There might be a split family situation. And so those team aspects are so important, so crucial to just the well-being of student athletes. And if that is not available in the fall, I think there's every coach in Vermont is going to be worried about a number of their kids. And some of them will adjust just fine, but there'll be many others that will have lost a huge part of their lives.
I agree with that. I kind of have a theory, and I would like you to talk about it, shoot me down. It could be completely off, but I know Addison County, there's a lot of farms. My parents grew up on farms, and I think sometimes that sports gave you an outlet from all of the chores, and without that outlet, you can get so isolated or so independent that you forget the need for others because you're kind of self-sustaining on that farm life or doing those chores. But can you talk about the interaction that people need, students, but also the parents need to get out from that daily grind of just their ongoing job?
Sure. And we have some kids that live on farms, and I know some kids are even told, listen, you can do one sport, because we need you on the farm. There's also a number of kids that if they don't have that outlet to play sports, sometimes they're asked to be home more often to care for siblings or whatever.
Yeah.
But every kid needs to be allowed to chase their own ambitions.
Right.
And if you're not able to do that, I think you get caught up in a daily grind that adults will often have to do. I don't think it's healthy. I think there's a certain amount of physical and mental health to being able to chase things down that you like to do. All of us seem to put in 40-hour or more weeks just to get by. And then when you have those moments to do something that you want to do, it helps get you through the next, 40 hours of stuff that you may not want to do.
Sure.
And if you're asked to do that as a child, I think what that does is it makes you grow up too fast.
Yeah.
And I worry more than just about the high school kids. Think about all the junior high kids and those elementary kids that, are just home, and you'll run out of positive things to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. Let's switch gears a little bit, talk some basketball. I was talking with some friends the other day, and I said, I coach very different than how I play now. I feel like I'm old. I have the right to catch and shoot. I can be lazy on defense, but I definitely coach, and I coach the younger level. So
Yeah.
3-point shots are if you're wide open and if you can make it or have that strength and fundamentals to shoot properly, then go ahead and shoot it. But as a player, I definitely just jack up from anywhere. Do you coach differently your players than how you personally like to play?
I don't talk about this much with my kids. I'm not even sure many of my kids even knew how much I played. But um, I when I was a kid, I actually was that jacket up player and run the court and throw the behind the back passes and all that
I
kind of stuff.
remember. I
Yeah.
remember.
And now I feel like I'm one of the few coaches that still coaches with kids that play back to the basket. We
Hmm.
have a post up game. We've always had the luxury of having decent post up skilled players. I spend a lot of time with it. My coaches spend a lot of time on it. And we play every game with the intent of how many times can we get to the foul line? Because I believe the team that gets the foul line the most usually wins,
Yeah. Yeah.
even if you don't hit them. But we play so many teams now that are 5 out. And that's how I played as a player. We played 5 out before anybody else was doing it at the high school
Right.
level. Now I play 3 out, 2 in. And if my former teammates could see me coaching that style now, they'd probably be shocked.
I remember my brother after games, we shared a bedroom growing up,
Yeah.
and he was 2 years older than me. And he would keep a journal of all of his stats, and he would just remember. And then we would watch the games that we had filmed, and he would be spot on, if not maybe miss a rebound here or there, but he would just keep everything to the T. But he had this list of turnovers, and I'm like, Jamie, you're a center. Like, how many turnovers do you have? And he said, every missed layup is a turnover in my mind. And he just had that mindset of if you are down low or a post player, make the right decision because you get to, have that effect on the game to create spots for the guards. Now, also, I was a guard, so he did not have any issues telling me that my turnover would have been a layup if I would have passed the ball to him. But those memories of playing for me with my brother, definitely with teammates, are so special. Can you just talk about some of the kids that might not be aware of how special it is being on a high school basketball team?
Yeah, I mean, I think of a couple kids that I played with. They weren't stars on the team, but I only had one kid in my class that played with me. His name was Mark Luce, and he wasn't the best player on the team, but I can't tell you how much I enjoyed playing with him because he got the absolute most out of his
Yeah.
abilities. And I feel like that translates to other aspects of his life later on. I don't talk with him much now, but I still know his family a little bit. Um, I see players that I have now. I had a couple players last year. One in particular I can think of, this Amber Crummery. She wasn't a big time scorer for us, but she was the perfect teammate. She not only rooted for herself, but she rooted for her teammates. I can remember there were times during games where like it was time, like we kind of had a rotation, and I'd be like, "Okay, you ready to go?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm ready to go, but I can understand if you want to keep so and so in there long because they just made 2 3 pointers in a row." She
Hmm.
was that kind of player. She wanted to be out there as much as anybody, but she understood. And when you have those type of players, you feel really good as a coach because you got through to them more than just
Yeah.
it's more than wins and losses. It's about creating relationships with your teammates.
So, not to let the cat out of the bag, and this is not a backhanded compliment, but Harwood, which I'm a
Mhm.
part of the program, we were able to beat you guys this past season. And Tommy shared that that was the first time he had ever coached a team that beat a Virgins team. Harwood's done a good job of rebuilding. We've been fortunate to have some key athletes come in to
Mhm.
the program. Can you just share what it's like being a part of a program that rebuilds, but also sees another team rebuilding?
Yeah, so I mean, we've been playing Harwood for a while, and we did have their number for a number of years. Actually, when I first started coaching there, they had some really good players and their team was better than ours. But obviously, Harwood went through a lull, and then Tommy has built that up so fast. I think it's what he's done with the younger groups has really contributed to that. I would say, watching that is satisfying for me too. Um, we've had some good games with you guys. I mean, our game last year, I think, was the first game of the year, went to overtime,
Overtime,
if I
right? Yeah,
believe.
yeah,
And at the time, I mean, we were like, I wasn't sure what I had as a team. And then as you guys are going along and just mowing people down, you realize like, wow, even though we lost, that was a good game for us,
yeah, yeah.
because I didn't know where we were at, and we ended up with a really good team and record as well. And to see where you guys have come, and to know that we can be measuring sticks for each other,
Yeah.
that's that's a good thing. It's I mean, in a lot of programs, your Mount Abes and your Windsors and your Thetfords, it seems like they're good for 20, 25 years in a row. They have great programs, but they also have athletes that they get year in and year out.
Yeah.
And someone like us, or you guys, when we get that nucleus, we got to make the most of it, and that's
Right.
really hard as a coach.
Right.
It's hard to teach kids how to win. You get to those close games, and you have a chance to win, but you might make that turnover because you're not used to winning.
Right. Right.
So it's satisfying to watch you guys as well.
And now for you as a coach, head coach, I mean, I know every coach, I'm just going, do you have aspirations of coaching higher? Like if there was a college program that came open, would that, or like a pro job, and not to get you in trouble at Virgins or anything like that, but I just look at Will Voigt and see like the progression he made from where he started. It's a great story. And I know that Vermont coaches do not get paid full time. So there's also other things you're doing, but that love of basketball, that drive to coach, do you kind of wonder if there's something else for you?
I kind of live in the moment year to year a little bit. There were times when I was younger. I used to work a lot with Charlie Mason, who ended up going to New England College, and he had asked me at one point if I would consider helping him when he was at Johnson. And I think the very next year he took that New England College job, and it flashed in my mind briefly that might be a route that I'd want to go. I also got a chance. When Will first started the Frosties, he asked me to help him with the tryouts. I got to meet some wonderful people like Marty Durda, who helps me now, and got to coach with some really good guys during that trial period. Obviously, we watch Will's accomplishments from afar now because he travels the world coaching. I'm very familiar with what Joe Salerno has done, and sometimes it enters my mind, but more often than not, what brings me back is you get attached to the group of kids that you're coaching, and you want to see them through, and you get to meet them as freshmen. In my case, I usually know the kids all the way down to third grade.
Right.
And just like when I left Cabot, that was very hard to do. But I saw that opportunity in Virgins, and now it would be very hard to move on from there as long as they keep wanting me back.
Yeah. So, and that leads great into this next question. A couple questions will get you out. Billy Waller, head coach at Vermont Virgins, the Commodore. So, thank you for doing this. It's simply the seniors mean so much to Vermont high school coaches in particular, because as you shared, we know them since elementary school. The playoffs for the girls' side this year were so disrupted for us by the championship game for Division I. They had to have a quad champion. When you think about all the seniors, specifically in the spring sports, that missed out on that year, their final year, what are your thoughts to those kids?
Couple things. One, congratulations on handling that kind of thing. From everybody that I've talked to, much better than I would have. I think I would have had a tough time as a player leaving something unfinished. But for all those kids that are going through something that has been unprecedented in our lives, they're part of history in their own way. I don't know what certain schools are going to do as far as hanging banners or whatever, but something tells me over the next 100 years, we're going to look at that particular banner and know, what that year meant. Those kids will have a special part in history, more so than most kids that just go through and win championships.
Right. I think will be a great answer to Trivial Pursuit, like the 2050 edition, whatever it is. So, hey, Billy, before I let you go, I just wanted to ask you this as far as basketball. When did you reach a point where you missed playing? I Yeah, because I just qualified because there was a time where I was coaching, but I still wanted to play. Then it just kind of hit that I couldn't play at the level I wanted to, but
Yep.
then I never could play at the level I wanted to. But it kind of hit where I wanted to cheer for my kids, and it was for me. It was actually watching my kids play. But when did that hit for you?
So I played in high school and then I played in college. And then when I was done there, um, I still played like in men's leagues for a little bit. And I started coaching early. I got my first JV coaching job when I was 20 years old and still in college. And then I had a varsity job by the time I was 21. So as soon as I felt like when I was coming up the court and I was more worried about what the other four kids were doing, I'm not talking about getting open. I'm talking about, are they setting their screen right? Are they coming off it correctly? And when I realized I was more concerned with that than I was putting the ball in the hoop, I started to make that transition.
Hmm.
And then when I was looking, during the summer, how to get kids together to play instead of looking for my own game,
Yeah.
and I started to realize I've made that transition. I probably made that transition way earlier than most people, but it's because I got a varsity job when I was 21.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome. Hey, Coach, thanks so much for making the time. We wish you all the best, and I look forward to, and I hope we can get some games in against each other this fall, this winter. So thanks again, Coach.
absolutely, Jeff. And make sure you tell your brother I said hello. And he was absolutely right. He would have been a tougher matchup for me than Derek Brunel or Nathan Frizzell would have.
I'll let him know. I'll let him know. And that's Coach Billy Waller from Virgins. Make some time, some great interviews. Later on today, we have Chris Lamica and David Thibodeau. If you watch the Netflix series Waco, he's going to be joining at 3 o'clock today. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again soon. And Jay Fuller Interviews, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, places you will not find Coach Billy Waller.